Warning, this podcast is not for the faint of heart.
We keep it real and raw.
And talk about issues that other podcasts wouldn't dare. This is the Truth of the Matter podcast with Dr. Spencer. Step into our world. What do you do if you fall in love with one of your kids' friends who's over 18? How do you handle getting caught in bed with your boss? Why do girls like bad boys? Are you burned out from an unbalanced career and personal life? Are you still working while your kids are telling you how their days went? Our passion is to help people in relationships, anyone you have a connection with in life, neighbors, coworkers, family, spouse, kids, yourself, and helping you achieve the work-life balance. Let's have some fun and let's get educated. This is the Truth of the Matter podcast. And now your host, Dr. Lamar Renee Spencer.
Well, hello, everyone. You know who it is, Dr. Lamar Renee Spencer, and welcome to the Truth of the Matter podcast with Dr. Spencer. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think about the episode, not just this, but even going forward. Because again, it's all about helping everyone out, and hopefully, maybe you have a great story too that you can help us out. So today I have a special guest. And we have Mr. George Brooks. Mr. Brooks, when I tell you, is so passionate about so many different topics that affect us, especially nowadays. I asked him, I said, please, let's just do a series, because when I talk about his outreach and also his stories, it touched my heart. Matter of fact, I only scheduled about 15 minutes for us to kind of talk the other day. And we went way beyond that. When I say beyond that, it's almost like talking to him, you feel like you've known him forever. And he's like an activist as well. So, Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming on. And I didn't even get on the Meta Association yet, which we're going to talk about that later. But thank you again for coming on. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about mental health. We know that mental health, it affects our communities, right? We know May is Mental Health Month, great. But mental health is something that we need to be conscientious of daily, because it does affect us. And often it affects our families, and we're too scared to say anything. I want to be the beacon of this, along with the experts like Mr. George Brooks, because often in families, we're always told what goes on in the house stays in the house, because we're too embarrassed to know or let people know what really goes on. So Mr. Brooks, help me out here with this mental health thing. We know it's important. Help me out here. Give us a little backstory about the mental health and what you've gone through.
Right. Well, my personal story, excuse me, about age 7, I started noticing, and it was brought to my attention even at that early age, that I didn't necessarily process my emotions the same way that many of my peers did. And I can say I was blessed in the sense that my parents weren't the type that denied mental illness issues. They didn't deny emotional issues. There was some awkwardness as far as them dealing with it, but they did address it. So I'm blessed in that regard. So I started in therapy about age 10. 10 was probably the first time I saw a psychiatrist. And due to, various issues such as environment and genetic predispositions, I was later diagnosed in my 20s with bipolar disorder. And once I received that initial diagnosis in my early 20s or mid 20s, I began to sort of reverse engineer what I'd gone through my whole life. I was able to go back and trace back the steps of a lot of my diagnosable mental health issues, and those different. We'll discuss that later. But throughout my adolescence, it was pretty difficult. I dealt with the food addiction as a way to deal with trauma. I of course, faced ridicule for my weight, things like that. Also, at home, I dealt with a little bit of that. And plus with my own psychosis, it was sort of a perfect storm for a different adolescence. So when I got older, I was not mentally healthy because we just, as a society, didn't take mental health like a health issue. So a lot of times people will get treatment for a while, they'll stop, and they'll continue that cycle. So that's what I did. My bipolar disorder worsened in my 20s. I was married, had a child, had two sons, as a matter of fact, and it caused great difficulty in my marriage. I had about a 10-year addiction to cocaine, developed that. Mental health worsened, physical health worsened, everything worsened. And I got to the point where I was looking at myself and realizing I wasn't me. And what I found to this day is that it all relates to mental health. And that's the thing of it. And I think that's the thing that we've been missing out on as a society and as a diaspora, is that we have to address our mental health issues first, as a culture, as Black people, with people of color especially. Not that I speak in terms of excluding anyone else, but I have to clean my own house before I clean my neighbors. And me being a Black male and having experienced the things that I have and seen and learned the things that I have, I feel like God's purpose for me is to use that experience and trauma and all that will break most people to try to help people. But one of our biggest problems in our community is the stigma of mental illness. That's what you're alluding to about keeping things in house, not wanting to discuss things, because we all have that relative that we know had issues. Many of us have our own issues. Many of us are raising children with issues. And it's finally time for us to be accountable as a people and start addressing our mental health, because even our economic survival depends on us dealing with our mental issues first.
You're absolutely right. So first of all, again, I know I said it even before many times, but thank you so very much, because I think it's very brave of you to come on, especially as being a man. And I know often you don't hear about men coming saying, this is what it is, because you had that whole male masculinity, years ago, where it's like, don't cry, don't show emotions. And I appreciate you coming on telling this story, because it's something that we need to talk about. This goes on. I know my family, mostly everyone I know, it happens. Again, we sweep it under the rug, especially when it comes to mental health, because it's easy for us to say, you know what? I'm gonna go take some nerve pills. I'm gonna put you a crazy check, things like that. Now your children have been getting this quote unquote crazy check as a child, and they're still getting it, and they think, okay, I'm beating the system because they're paying me. But you still have not fixed the problem. What you've done is you've actually done yourself and your family a disservice, and you put a Band-Aid over the problem. Hence is why we have these generational traumas. No one wants to get help. In our families, what are we taught? Either what goes on in this house stays in this house, or we're going to pray about it. We're going to go to the clergy. We're going to talk amongst each other. But our close family and friends are the ones that actually have the mental illness. They're sharing, they're sharing the same story as we are.
Yes, they're being they're involved in, they're being traumatized as well. And the thing is that, like you said, there's been a lot of inaction. There's been the attitude of praying it away. I've heard that so much to the point where it almost made me nauseous. And that's fine if that helps, but I mean, you can't just pray something away. You have to pray and do something about it. Pray as you work toward a solution. Pray as you work toward resolution, toward understanding, toward recovery. So, and I'm glad that some of the churches that I'm dealing with now are starting to address that. There's less of a adversarial attitude between, the clergy and mental health practitioners. There's starting to be a lot more collaboration. And I think that's one thing that's really going to go a long way toward helping our people toward healing and recovery.
I agree. And I'm so thankful that more churches are getting involved and they want to do something. They want to make a change, because people in, churches, and again, I want to put this disclaimer. This is just my opinion. Doesn't mean that you guys have to take it, but you have people in your church that they will not make a move until the bishop, the apostle, or whomever says it in the church. Once that person, recognizes it and say, look, we need to get this help for our congregation, then people will follow along. And I appreciate what you're saying, because you're like, look, hey, I need to get the church involved. I need to get the school, whomever needs to be involved. Because now we are that generation of change. We're the change agents, I like to call it. We're no longer being quiet because we realize that our mental health is hurting us. And not just us, but even our children. It's actually making us physically sick.
And the people that don't want to buy into that, I tell you this, it's keeping you broke. I mean, honestly, that's what it's doing, not dealing with it. I'm sure over the course of our conversations, we can spell that out some more to those that don't get it, but it's keeping money from you. That's really what it's doing. It's keeping you from what mental illness does when it's untreated, and let me make the distinction between a diagnosable mental illness and someone that's going through something that, I call that situational mental crisis, a situational mental crisis, where you may say the pandemic. It didn't necessarily create a lot of mental illnesses, but it brought a lot of people into a space where they were all going through something mentally, and it spread awareness. But the thing about it is you have to take action about it. You need to have a plan about it. You have to take it seriously. And we don't see the word we leave out when we talk about mental health is the health part. It as though it's cancer. Now, if someone had cancer, heaven forbid, no one would tell them, hey, just, you don't need the medication, just pray it away. No, but with mental illness, we still do that. And they don't understand, some people don't understand that mental illness is real. If you look at my brain scan and look at the brain scan of a person without bipolar, it's not going to look the same. It's going to be different. There are chemical imbalances, and that's what the medication is there for, to help balance you out so you can try to function as optimally as possible. And that's the thing people don't get, because as an advocate, I hear all the time, I don't want medication. And if you choose not to, fine, but accept the responsibility that comes with that. If you choose not to take medication and something happens and you end up in legal trouble, which often happens to those of us living with mental illness, then that's on you because you chose not to take your medicine. Don't blame the pharmaceutical industry. Blame you for your inaction and you not doing due process to research medications fully, because that's often what I find. I don't want to take that. But have you researched it? Have you talked to your doctor? Have you done the due diligence to find out how this benefits you? And that's ignorance on our people's part, because people profit from keeping Black folks ignorant. And they found the ultimate chain as far as our mental health, because everyone is affected by it. And people use that as a tool to keep us subjugated, to keep us broke. And I know I may be going on a bit of a tangent, but it's still relevant. If you look at the way social engineering happens, as far as things that we're told as people that other people aren't told, that affects our mental health. We have generational trauma from racism. That's part, and I'm just listing things that we need to deal with. Mm-hmm. And this is subsequent to first us chipping away at the stigma. We haven't even done that yet. So we have a lot of work to do. The pandemic, I think, brought a lot of things to the light that we were ignorant of, all of us, myself included. And I hope one thing that people do glean from the pandemic, as tragic as it was and is, and it has been, is that we are all affected, by mental health. No matter what your color is, no matter what your economic status is. Like, I hate when people talk about the Kanye West thing. Well, he's got money, but he's still got a mental illness. And sometimes some of my people, we how can I put this in a diplomatic way?
Right.
We'll fall for all kind of BS, but anything that's trying to help us, we don't want to do.
No, we don't. We do not. And I was just talking to someone earlier. I said, the funny thing about it is you will go viral if you're talking about something crazy. I'm going to get $50,000 next week. God's going to bless me. Click, 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 click. You're viral. Oh, my baby daddy's not doing this. Click, 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 click. I can't get my eyelashes. Click, 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 click. But if it's something that's beneficial to you and your family, no one wants to talk about it. It's almost like crickets.
Right.
And
It is. And I can attest to that.
yeah,
Literally,
it's
it's like crickets.
yes. And I'm telling you, I get a little upset sometimes because I have people come on like you who are trying to make a difference in our community because you're saying, hey, I'm just like you. This is my story. But people don't want to participate. But those are the ones that really need it.
And those are the ones that the only time Black folks talk about mental illness is when it's a mass shooting, or there's another instance when a celebrity does something that they deem unusual.
Right.
You know, so that's the only time it ever comes up. But you don't understand that 17-year-old young Black male that should be pursuing his education is something worthwhile standing on the corner. It's something mentally askew there that needs to be addressed. Not saying that he's schizophrenic, not saying that he's crazy, not saying any of that. But there's some mental fine-tuning that can take place that could help benefit him, benefit the community, and help him sustain himself where he's not a drain on the stage. Now, I'm not against social programs at all. I've used them. We've all used them. But in terms of those with mental illness, one thing that I do hope to, and I do advocate for, is creating programs that will get people off the dole of disability, because when you begin that, it becomes systemic, it becomes generational, and being on Social Security is just basically it becomes mandated because you can't earn a lot. It becomes mandated poverty.
Right.
You know, a person on Social Security cannot function, cannot survive. So, and many of those people are people with mental illnesses that if only they would address it more prudently, if only the resources were in place to better help them, maybe they wouldn't have to be totally dependent on that system. But the government wants you dependent on them because
Right. I totally agree with you. He's going to come back in. But yeah,
okay,
okay.
there's no profit in the cure. Yeah, there's no profit in the cure. So, I mean, it's the same with our mental health. You know, and right now we can no longer blame the white man. We can't say them, they, and it's us at this point. Because if I see videos all the time of women exploiting themselves, of men doing stupid things, and those get hundreds of thousands of views and responses. But someone trying to help you, speaking on an issue that you know affects you.
Right.
Well,
let me ask you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. When did you first realize that something was a little off?
About 7 years old. Because
I'm sorry.
Scary. Living with a mental illness is scary because, especially in my case, I have a couple of diagnoses and I have to manage it every day. I'm also diabetic and heart failure patient, so I have to manage quite a few health issues every day. And every action I take, I have to think about how would this affect me, not just physically, but mentally. Is it going to trigger me? Is it going to do this? And for a long time, when I was kind of in that 10-year down period, I was obsessed with my mental illness. And that's something else that we with mental illnesses fall into. We begin to almost personify that diagnosis. We obsess over it. We take symptoms and we try to address every symptom and adopt every symptom to make sure that we are as sick as we think we are. And that's another weird thing. And me bringing that up is to let you know that those kind of things have not been discussed. See, now you can hear from a person that's dealing with a mental illness and tell you what it's like, and know what's needed, not just from society, not just from caretakers, loved ones, but also on a legislative level. But you have to listen to it for anything to improve, because if you don't, and if we as Black people don't start dealing with our mental illness, we're going to keep having our celebrities in pain, because that's really what's going on. We're going to keep having shootings. There was an instance here. I'm actually in my hometown of Memphis. And about a month and a half ago, we had a guy just on Facebook Live going around shooting people. You know, just at random. So, that's a mental health issue. A lot of people say, well, he was high on drugs. Yes, he was high on drugs, but he's usually used, most people use drugs because of unresolved trauma. I don't know anybody. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know everything. But everybody I know that's had addiction issues started using to dull some sort of pain. It may have been under the guise of having a good time, or I'm grown, I can do what I want, but underlying that was some sort of trauma. And we need to deal with issues like that. There's so much that happens in our families that we keep secret. All kinds of abuse that happens in families that we keep secret for generations. Then it comes out, and then the family is fractured. That's a mental health issue. That's a communication issue. And one thing we as people need to look at is being more open to therapy. I've been in therapy 4 years. You can pick your therapist, people. You don't have to just go to whoever. If you're not comfortable with their therapist, put in some work. Spend some of the same time you spend on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, and research what's going to actually help you. Research therapists. I found I wanted to get a black male therapist. I found one. Wonderful therapist. Been with him for almost 5 years. Helped change my life. And I'll admit there was a percentage of me when I initially started that was hesitant to do therapy because of that old thinking of, I don't know, I'm kind of telling somebody all my problems. But once I tried it and I felt better, I was able to think things through. I'm not the same person I was because of therapy. We got to get over that, because we go to the barbershop, tell everybody all our business. We post all our business on social media. You can't talk to a therapist? That's just trifling. That's just trifling. And then you're just making excuses. Just admit you're afraid to learn some things about yourself. And being afraid is okay. Going through recovery is difficult. It is scary. And it's okay to admit you can be afraid. But what are you going to do about it? Are you going to be brave and courageous and soldier on and help yourself and improve your family and possibly save your life or someone else's life, because mental health is that serious? Or are you just going to keep doing the status quo, keep living in the same poverty, keep not getting ahead, keep being frustrated? And I'm speaking specifically to the men as well. Keep dealing with the same issues with women, with our kids, with incarceration, with disenfranchisement. Are we going to do something about it? Because if you're waiting on white folks to do it for you, they're not going to do it for you. If you're waiting on your neighbor, your mama, anybody to do it for you, it's not going to do it for you. You have to look in the mirror and have a sense of accountability and do it for yourself. You have to manage your health. Mental health is part of your health. Take some responsibility, deal with it. And I'll tell you one example. Let's say, and I hate this word, baby mama, but a lot of guys deal with issues with women. Their significant others, their exes. That's an opportunity right now. Therapy just for a guy going through that would be beneficial to him. He'll learn not what he's doing wrong, but areas and opportunities for him to improve himself. And he'll see that blossom in other areas of his life. If you apply what you learn in therapy, and if you apply what you learn through that healing that we've never done as a people, never done it,
right,
you'll find everything in your life will improve. But it's time to get off our butts and finally do something about it.
You're absolutely right. So when in families, how would you recommend, like if you know who the person or the people, like those common denominators, how would you go about saying, I'm hesitating to say, let's go get some help, or you may need a little help, because you know how that is. Once someone says it, now it becomes a project. So now you become, quote unquote, the black sheep of that family. You're starting trouble, like all of those things. But because nobody wants to say anything.
Well, I think the biggest problem is, aside from the stigma, is just communication. We as Black people don't know how to communicate effectively a lot of ways. Now, I'm not generalizing, but I'm saying many of us, that is our problem. And that's why you see so many fractured homes and issues in marriages and relationships. It's not because people may not be compatible, it's communication. And nowhere is there more deficient than in many families. Like I said, keeping the family secrets. Well, so-and-so did this. Don't tell Big Mama. Don't tell this. Don't tell that. Don't tell. All that does is just put layers and layers of trauma on top of other things, because that not telling policy hurts everyone. And I have every Black family I believe has experienced that. I know I have.
Yeah.
And we have to get over that. It's time to start airing things out and dealing with them, because we can't move forward. And we're not seeing how that's hurting us. But if you're in a situation where you know that someone in your family needs mental health care, you have to be careful how you go to them. You can't go to them in as though you're trying to persecute them. You can't say you need help. You should sit down and talk to them. Okay, what's going on with you? Talk to me. Try to make me understand. Try to get into that person's head and try to understand what they're going through. Try to empathize. We don't empathize enough as a society. You sympathize, but that's not the same thing as empathy. So empathy is actually trying to understand, and we don't try to understand each other, and we don't treat each other well as a people. We're a sick society. We're physically sick, we're mentally sick, we're spiritually sick. And the best thing we can do, we have to heal ourselves one at a time. And that's why I'm such an advocate for mental health, because I've seen and I've gone through what someone who's diagnosed and deals with ridicule goes through. And that's why you have so many suicides.
Right.
Especially among bipolar men, because men, we already have a hard time communicating. We're already taught to internalize and keep it in, and that's a sign of weakness. It's not. I'm not saying you have to be blubbering and crying every 5 seconds, but if that's how you cope, that's how you cope. But we as men, need to come together and speak on our own and find ways and get a sense of brotherhood so we can have our own safe place of healing.
Right. You're absolutely right. And sometimes you could spend days or months trying to figure out the right words, the right way, the right time to say it to someone. I know I've experienced, and it may not even just be family, it could be friends. They'll say, why are we talking about this so early in the morning? Why are we talking about this so late at night? And then you hit them with the question, okay, so when is a good time to talk about it? Because no one wants to really deal with it. And often we don't want to hear that we're the problem.
Oh yeah. And that's why people don't want to discuss it, because one, it's scary. It's hard for people to, okay, if you have a physical disability, everyone can see that. That's apparent. That we understand, that we get. But for people, especially those without a diagnosable condition, it's hard for them to conceptualize the fact that there's something chemical in your brain that you cannot apparently see that's causing all this in your life. So they feel like, well, just stop it. That, to me, I had a relative tell me one time, why do you want to be bipolar? And that still befuddles me.
Why do you want to be? Okay. I mean,
so that's where we are. I mean, that's more common than not the reaction that you'll just get from the lay person.
You don't want to be bipolar.
But see, that's the perception. That's the stigma. That's what we're up against. We're fighting that way of thinking. And it's just, we as a people got our head in the sand so much. I was just like, when the Will Smith thing happened on social media, that's all that was talked about for about a good month. But if I posted a video about mental health and something that I felt, then maybe people were just not feeling what I'm saying, that's fine. But something poignant gets crickets. And then you want to complain about our situation. So here's the solution for that, because I know a lot of times people have gripes, and I've griped enough, but I'm trying to have solutions also.
Mm-hmm. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have to engage more.
Right.
We have to engage more. There's a mental health first aid training. I think parents and educators should be required to have that, just like they have CPR training. I've had mine for 2 years. It's an 8-hour course. You take it, and you're certified for 2 years to render mental health first aid. I mean, it's very concise. There's some people are offering it free now. I think when I got it done, it was $100, but it was worth it to me, not just to the fact that I'm raising a son with a mental illness, but I myself have one, and I never know what I may encounter in life. I may see someone at the grocery store in a crisis. And so, and we're bad about that. Let's stop exploiting each other. Let's not see someone in dire straits, whether it be a mental health issue, whatever, and bust out our cell phones to document it and put that down and go help. We're not doing that enough. And I think we're at a point now where we're watching life happen to us instead of living it. And this is part of the problem. And like I said, dealing with mental health, and you said it at the beginning, there's so many different things I'm passionate about because I've lived this for 44 years and I've seen how it affects people. And the main part of me really started my nonprofit is that I found myself horribly addicted, near death, raising 2 sons, in a traumatic divorce, all this at one time, in a stranger from my family, really at rock bottom. And I remember standing in an office trying to get help, and there were no resources. And I said, I don't want that feeling for another Black man again, because I'm trying. So I'm thinking about the guy that is trying. That's why I started my nonprofit, to try to provide resources and network and do things to help that man that was in the position that I was in, that doesn't have resources. And not that I'm making a distinction between men and women other than the obvious, but there does seem to be a great disparity in terms of resources for men and women, especially men and women of color. So I want to provide something for us men, because I feel as though we should be the leaders of our communities, and we haven't been. That women have had to take on a role that's not beneficial to them. So now we have the strong woman, and that encompasses so many things. There's a whole other show in itself. But I feel like many women have taken on a role that they should not have had to. Not saying they could, not saying that, but it is not yielding the same results as if us men were doing a lot better by ourselves.
Right.
And by everyone.
Right. And let's face it, right? When something happens to women, we have a lot of people to talk to. We have our friends, we got our kids, we got people, parents, whomever. We have more people. When men have problems, you guys don't have that many people to talk to.
No, because we can't go to our male friends and be like, I'm feeling this too quick. I mean, there's some relationships. There's some of us that are blessed to have some of those relationships, but as a whole, you can't go and say, hey, I'm hurt right now. Or, when she left and is really messing with me. We have to put on the act of, well, I don't care, and internalize, and all that stuff builds up after a while. And that's why you have the angry Black man syndrome. It's frustration. It's frustration. And we end up taking it out in unhealthy ways instead of trying to find ways to process it. I'm not saying that you don't have a right to be angry. I'm not saying you don't have a right to be sad. Everyone has a right to their emotions and feelings. But the thing is to try to find healthy, productive, non-destructive ways to express them as a way of processing them. So, I encourage, especially Black men, try to find better ways to express their anger and frustration. If you need to get with a group of Black men that are like-minded and talk this stuff out, contact me at metassociation.org. If you need to hit the heavy bag, do that. If you need to go for a drive by yourself, do that. But try to find ways that won't be destructive or traumatic to someone else, because that's often the case. And that's where mental health is not a monolith, because it affects everyone. That cousin that had issues when you were growing up, that affects you to this day, and that's your cousin. So we're affecting a lot of people because we're not dealing with it. Right. It's like having the antidote to a poison and not taking it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I know you mentioned it a couple of times, and we were going to talk about it, but I think it's great to talk about it now. Tell us about the Meta Association.
Well, when I left Memphis after a traumatic divorce and from rock bottom, I moved to Dallas. That's where I reside. God inspired me to start Meta Association, which is my nonprofit, and we operate on 3 main principles right now. One is Black male mental health. That means spreading awareness, having discussions. I do a ton of public speaking. And we also focus on recidivism, because I found that many that are incarcerated don't receive mental health care. And oftentimes many of those with mental illnesses are incarcerated instead of treated because of lack of resources, lack of beds, lack of understanding, ignorance toward what mental illness is and looks like. And the third is fatherhood. I feel that in some ways fatherhood is under attack. especially Black fatherhood by certain groups, and I have to stand up for that. And in terms of fatherhood, I stand up for all fathers. In
Mhm.
fact, I just installed our board of directors last week, and we're working on a project with one of my son's former schools to do a co-parenting program. So we're seeking donations and funding to facilitate that. So we are actually out in the community, boots on the ground, doing the work, developing programs to try to address some of these issues surrounding mental illness, and co-parenting to me is very important.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where we're getting started. So anyone that can support us at metaassociation.org, if I could say it,
Please
we
do.
really appreciate it. If you can't donate, if you really can't donate, your prayers are welcome. They do go a long way. But we do have a Cash App that's listed there. And like I said, it goes toward funding these programs because we're developing a curriculum. And honestly, small nonprofits need things, copy paper, toner ink, things like that. It takes that to make it run. So I encourage people as a whole to support your small nonprofits that are doing the work. If you have a church member that's got a group together doing something, support them with your finances. That's what it takes. That's the difference between us and them, is that they support things, not just sharing it on Facebook, but they actually support things and get results, whereas we don't. So we
Right.
got to do better about that.
Yes, and you mentioned the toner. Toner can cost more than the actual printer.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it takes
It
up,
does.
I mean, it's things that are needed to do the work. And
Yes.
the thing is, the government isn't going to do the work for you.
Mm-mm.
I mean, the government is set up to pacify us. That's why they give us these pennies on these social programs, and to keep us to pay a bill that's already past due. There's no one getting ahead on this system. With the stimulus checks came out, those are pennies. But so many people got dependent on them because our mindset is so screwed up that we still expect the government to come in and give us something. No one's going to give you anything. No one's going to give you peace of mind but you. No one's going to give you recovery but you. No, so you have to go out and seize these opportunities and get up and actually take action. Because I know many people that make plenty of lists of what they're going to do. Oh, they got lists for days, but they haven't done anything.
Nothing executed.
Yeah. And my recovery didn't start till I actually did something. Otherwise, I'd be dead right now if I didn't take action. I didn't do it for my kids. I didn't do it for my parents. I didn't do it for family, because you can't. Because if you go into something with addiction or mental health recovery and really get well, you have to do it for yourself. And
Right.
those are the things that I talk about with Meta Association, because those are things that people need to hear. And not saying that they're going to follow any dogma that I prescribe, but at least it'll maybe get somebody thinking and take that first step. And with Meta Association, I'm willing to walk those steps with people. All they have to do is reach out to me.
Yep. Say it one more time, just for the people who didn't hear.
It's metaassociation.org. Reach me there. Our office number is 214-810-6518. I answer email and all that personally. If you need assistance, referrals, whatever I can do to help, whatever my organization can do to help in terms of improving Black male mental illness or anyone's mental illness, especially our people, just reach out and we'll do the best we can to help you. But we also need engagement and support. And that comes in form of donations to keep this going in order to continue the work that we've done.
Right. But you know what I really respect about you is you didn't play that blame game. And that's what I've been seeing so often and hearing so often. Playing the blame game. You made me do this. It was your fault. You're the reason why. It's about fixing you.
Right.
It's not about the other person. It's about you. If you notice that in your relationships, you're going through the same thing, then you're the problem.
Right. Exactly.
It's easy.
Yeah. And see, I did go through a period of blaming everybody. I was blaming my ex-wife. I was blaming my family. I was blaming circumstances. But the thing is, that was me thinking like a little boy. And I had to be a man. And the first part of being a man is being accountable for your own actions, because you but the stimulus itself you can't control. You have to be conscious of your triggers. You know,
Right.
if you find yourself broke because you keep losing jobs, it's something you're doing or not doing. So correct that behavior. Look at every relationship in your life and look at the area where it's lacking and see where you can improve. And don't expect that person to change. They probably won't. But at
Right.
least you will have improved yourself, and that'll benefit that relationship and other relationships.
Right. You know what I find though is I remember even going to school, even like college, families, just different things. People always assume that no one knows what's going on. And they do know. They just may not say anything because often we're always told or we think, you know what, that's them. It has nothing to do with me. Or if it's your family member, you're like, you know what, I'm just going to love them from across the street. I'm just deal with them from over here. We have all these sayings about it because again, we don't want to deal with it. And I thought this topic was really important because we have the holidays coming up. You have Thanksgiving coming, you're going to have Christmas coming, and New Year's. And that's the time where families and friends get together. And those are the times where you're saying, look, don't even invite so-and-so because you know they're toxic. You know they always want to argue. I've heard, you know what? Just make sure nobody knows. Send them a plate over there. We don't want to be bothered. Or the person that is I don't want to say problem, the concern, they don't want to go amongst people because then their little dirty secret is out.
Yeah.
But people know.
People know all these, and we talked a lot about family secrets. The thing is, those secrets are usually the worst kept secrets because everybody already knows or has an indication. So why not talk about them?
Right.
You know.
No.
I mean, everybody know. You know, Uncle Gilbert has some issues. You know, so you know it's already known. It's staring you in the face. Just deal with it. Right. And the thing about family is that unfortunately, sometimes if I've had to cut family out of my life because it wasn't healthy for me. It was toxic. I've got 3 sisters I haven't talked to in about 7 years.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, I'm bothered about it on some level, but I had to understand those relationships were keeping me unhealthy. And you got to learn to cut people out. I don't care if it is Big Mama. I don't care if it is your own mama. If she's toxic and she's disturbing your peace and your mental health, be like, all right, Mama, I'll call you on Mother's Day and see you on Easter, but it's gonna have to be deuces. And we're so afraid to do that because we feel like, well, there's my mama, so I got to take everything. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because if that relationship is keeping you sick, then it's not benefiting you and it's not benefiting that person. Don't let yourself be somebody's whipping post, especially if you're dealing with something. If you have a mental illness and you're being treated as a black sheep, then maybe that's not your family. Because genetic material doesn't make family to me.
Right.
Say blood. I don't care nothing about blood. My thing is, when my back's against the wall, who gonna come help me?
Right. That's the thing too, right? It took me a long time to get to that place. I said, you know what? Family is not always someone or the people that you share DNA with. It's not. And it doesn't matter if you've known someone 10, 15, 20 years. Sometimes the people that you have met a couple of years ago will, you know, is really in your corner. And I'm saying, I know people may think that, oh, here she go, or, you know, like, why would you think that way? That's your cousins and your family. No. And you're right, even your parents. Sometimes you just have to, you respect them, you love them, but when it comes to dealing with them day to day, no. You know, you can't, and you're right, for your own mental well-being.
Yeah.
I find that sometimes, you know, we don't realize how much of an effect sometimes these people have on us. I had a conversation the other day, and the lady said, you know what? I had a problem with my grandfather. He was so mean. She said, but you know one thing? He's been dead 20 years, and it's like he's still in my brain. And I said, yeah, you know why? I said, because you're still mentally imprisoned.
Right.
You know, and it's hard sometimes to shake it because you never dealt with it as a child. And if you try to talk about it, you know, family members, they're like, well, that's just how cousin so-and-so was. That's how your granddaddy was. And it's like acceptable. You know, this craziness is not acceptable.
Yeah.
At least you can respect the person. But I'm the same way. I'm like, you know what? When it comes to family, I love and like who love and like me. But if you're toxic to my mental health, I can't deal with it because I have a daughter to raise. I don't want her to grow up in that toxic environment where it's like Monday everybody went to work, Saturday everybody party, drinking Friday, Saturday because you got paid on Thursday. Sunday you going to church. Right after church, the cycle starts all over again.
Right.
And I said, no, I want to be that change because I'm not going through that. Like mental health is like winning the lottery when you get it together and you can pinpoint what's going on. And you're right, getting help. I'm like, you know what? I remember I had a Caucasian coworker. She's like, girl, I'm going to my therapist today. I'm like, therapist? You good? I'm going to my therapist. Like it wasn't nothing.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, wow, let me go. Like I made it into like a project. Like, let me go and do this. Because at the time I really didn't want to. And also I didn't want people to think, oh yeah, something's wrong. Because you know how we are. As soon as we mention therapy, you're like, girl, you ain't crazy, ain't nothing wrong with you. It's not that. I need someone to help me that's not connected to the problem.
Right.
And sometimes you are, you're that problem. I talked to my mother, right? And she said to me the other day, she said, you gotta be careful the people you talk to sometimes. She said, because, they're going to bed and next thing you know, whatever problem they're going through, it stays with you. And that becomes your problem. Because some of these people are mentally ill. And next thing you know, because they're not dealing with that illness, it stays with you. And
Right.
for me, it has stayed with me for weeks. And I did not want to believe it. I didn't want to face it. But I'm like, you know what? No. So when I let that person or the people go, I felt like a ton of bricks have been lifted.
Right. And I've had to do that with some people closer to me than what people most may think. But it's a matter of how well can I function with this person in my life? How well can I function with this person?
Right.
So once I began to see that be an albatross to me, I had to jettison it. I had to get rid of it as best way I could. And the thing is, you're gonna lose a lot of people when you go through recovery too. Let me tell you that. When you go through recovery, a lot of people not gonna mess with you anymore because they're gonna say you changed. Oh, you don't do this. Oh, now you think you're too good. It's not that. It's just you're trying to live a healthier existence. And
Right.
when you address your mental health, you don't think the same. When you address your emotional health, when you address all those generational self-imposed curses we put on ourselves as Black folks of keeping secrets, and Uncle Gilbert just being that way. Once we dig all that up and get rid of it, we are new people.
Right.
So that same relationship that we were in before, it doesn't suit us anymore. So we need to get out of it. So that's where a lot of times what I mean when you lose people, a lot of your closest friends won't want to mess with you, or you won't want to mess with them. You'll see the
Right.
toxicity in that person to be like, you know what, I'm in a better place. I kind of see what they bring. I love them, but let me go on and for my mental health, let me separate myself from that. And then
Right.
you can't be your mama. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. And we got to get over this provincial thinking of family overall. It's blood overall, and blood. Look, stick with people and build your support system. And sometimes they will be your family, but be open to the fact that it may not be. You
Right.
can't go to therapy saying, "Well, I ain't gonna do this. Well, I'm not gonna do this. Well, You don't set rules in your recovery. You let God and what your recovery, that path guide you. Don't try so hard to shoehorn yourself into something because you don't know what your recovery may look like.
Right. Right.
What
You're
I'm saying?
absolutely right.
So
Yeah, you're right. And we didn't even get on too much of, like I said, well, I wanted to make sure this is a series because, again, when you're co-parenting with someone who has mental illness, or you are that person, when you have parents, we touched on all of this, right?
Mhm.
That a lot of times our lives change, or we become alienated because, again, we don't want anyone to know.
yeah,
And
and the thing is, people know.
people know.
We're far more transparent than what we give ourselves credit for. So, people know. People can tell when you're going through something. And
Right.
it's just a matter of just, you can't find happiness and peace in other people. You have to find it within yourself first.
Right. And
And
yeah, I'm
but
sorry. I hate to say this like this, but oh my goodness, it's the truth. Sometimes when people pass on and you're crying, sometimes those are happy tears. And the
Really?
reason why is because those same people are the ones that have wreaked havoc in a family. The ones, once they have gone on, it's almost like people come together, people are happy. And a lot of times we're taught when the matriarch and patriarch pass on, the family is separate. Not always.
Wow.
Sometimes the matriarchs and the patriarchs were the problem.
Right.
Once they go away to wherever they're going, things change. It's almost like you're like, yeah, we can breathe. Yes.
Yes. You're right. You're right. And let me clarify too. That's not necessarily because I know some people have a problem with it. It's not happiness that the person is gone. It's happiness that their stimulus is gone. That negative energy is gone.
Right.
That doesn't mean we love the person any less, or we respect him any less, or anything like that. But it's something that they were bringing to the table that was harmful.
Exactly. I'm glad you clarified that. Yes, because I'll be getting inboxes and all kind of things. And you're absolutely right. Some of these people, my gosh, or you're sitting around, their spirits are there. You're like, you remember so and so used to say such and such, and I'm like, yeah, that's why we were arguing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And I'll say something. And I'll piggyback on the therapy thing that I just came to mind. The good thing about therapy too, even if you don't have a mental health illness, I think everybody should try like 3 sessions of therapy, just see how it goes. You realize, like I realized the things that I was doing to other people that were toxic.
Mhm.
So it helped me kind of change because I made some major life changes because I realized it wasn't just me being the receptacle of all that toxic energy. I was doling some out myself because I wasn't dealing with my issues, and it was really affecting people. So therapy helped me realize that and helped me make some changes.
You're
So,
absolutely
that's
right.
the thing too, is a two-way street. It's not just about going in there talking about what your mama did to you, how big mama talked to you crazy, how your little brother stole your Jordans and all that. It's about you learning about yourself to find out how can I get in a better place.
You're absolutely right. Because I'll tell you, there was a time where someone would say something and I'm popping off like, what? I would. And then next thing you know, I don't want to be bothered with you.
Yeah.
Because again, don't know how to effectively communicate, had no good coping skills. So when you go to these therapists, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you touched on it. When you go to these therapists, they listen at both sides. They're impartial to this.
Yeah.
Your well-being is their priority, and I'm not going to say it, but like your well-being is their priority. When you look, it's hard for me to say that. They're going to ask you what part you play. They want to know the whole story because it's never just one-sided.
Right. Because that's part of a victim mindset. When you can't see things objectively, you're essentially handcuffing yourself emotionally and making yourself a victim where it's everybody else's fault. And that's not to say that people don't contribute to it. We all know that. This is like this when people complain, when I hear black men complain about the white man, I'm like this. That's a problem. You already know that. Okay, instead of you complain about it, do something else about it. Find a way to circumvent it. Find ways around your issues. Don't just say, I don't want to deal with it, because that's cowardly. That's trifling. That's lazy. That's mentally and emotionally lazy. The real work and change comes in sometimes finding those solutions to things that you do need to address in your life. It's the process. It's not always the destination. And you can glean so much from that process of going through recovery, of going through therapy, of just even thinking in terms of, I need therapy. Maybe there's some things about me that I need to change.
Right. You're absolutely right. And sometimes we as Black folks, we're our own worst enemy. Sometimes help doesn't always come from someone who looks like you. Sometimes we will tear each other down faster than any other race. Some other races be like, you know what? I'm gonna help you, but not us. We'll tear each other down. You know, we definitely will. But I want to say thank you so very much.
Thank you
for coming on, talk about this. You're going to be on again. You're going to be like a regular because we need to talk about this, and we need to make sure that people know what and where and how to reach you at Med Associations, because guess what? We need it. And it's confidential. Don't worry about who may say what, think about. You go get healthy for your own self. You can't get much better than this. Again, I've said you're a beacon of health, but then also you've been there, done that.
Right.
What better, what better help can you get? I know we've said it a couple of times, but just for the people who ain't hear it again, please give them the contact information again. And I'm putting it out there. I'm going to put it out there in all caps.
You can learn more about my nonprofit Meta Association at www.meta.association.org. Our office number is 214-810-6518. On our site, you can find all of my contact information. Like I said, a little bit about the history of the nonprofit, and also interviews and things that we've done on our social media tab. So please visit us at metaassociation.org, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, thank you so very much again. Please reach out, even if it's not for you, your uncle, your cousin, your son, your nephew, your co-worker, the people in your church, whomever you think may need help.
Yeah.
Please.
And at least when you call Meta, you'll get somebody that's been through there. You'll get somebody that really cares, because and me personally, this may be my Achilles heel, but I take the time to actually hear people's stories so I can find the best way to try to guide them and things like that. So please contact us at medassociation.org. And like I said, look forward to hearing and meeting some of you.
Yes. Well, thank you so very much again. I appreciate you coming on. Again, we can talk all day as we did it seem, right? But thank you, sir. I appreciate you. And everyone, thank you so much for watching. Have a good morning, afternoon, night. I don't know where you guys are. And we always appreciate you here. And hopefully you got something out of this. So thank you. Take care.
You've been listening to The Truth of the Matter with Dr. Spencer. Yes, we talk about taboo topics, but that's life. And we keep it real and raw. Our passion is to educate and enlighten. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review the show. And we'll be back soon. But if you have a unique relationship situation and you'd like help, or you're tired of having to choose between your career and personal life, Dr. Lamar Renee Spencer is a life alignment strategist and a certified life, relationship, and business coach. So make sure to reach out on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Lamar Spencer, on Twitter at Dr. Spencer 15, on Facebook at Dr. Lamar Renee Spencer, and the website drlamarspencer.com. Or go old school and call 973-214-6464.
Don't forget to purchase the book, The Depth and Diversity with Relationships. Find it on Amazon and the website.
See you next time on The Truth of the Matter.